bath? The man wanted him to take a bath? Patrick flinched away from the man and stared apprehensively at him. He was offering him food, but at the cost he was putting forward, Patrick wasn't sure if it was worth it to take the man's food. But he hadn't eaten in ages. What to do? He could do what the other man was saying, but then he would be submitting to something he didn't even want to do. It was then that he noticed what was on the papers that the man was holding out from the blasted beast's back. Although he found it hard to draw his eyes away from the nice, juicy apple, he managed to do so in order to see that the papers had the same message as the poster he had seen attached to the tree a while back. "The tournament?" he said, saying the word slowly, testing it on his tongue. It was a strange word, like nothing he had ever come across before. However, he was quite adept at sounding out words thanks to his mother, and this word has easy sounds to make out. "What is the tournament?" he asked, his eyes fixating on the apple again. If he could distract the man long enough, maybe he could try to grab the apple away from him. He was so hungry that he barely considered the height of the horse to be a factor in his plan, but he wasn't about to bathe just for this man. It took Peregrine a minute to remember that this was a peasant, a man unfamiliar with the ways of civilized people. And when he remembered this, he let out a heavy sigh, as if to broadcast his displeasure with being put out of his way to explain something that was so usual, so everyday in his life. "The tournament," he said slowly and clearly, to be certain that the serf didn't miss a syllable. "It's the cooperative war games that bring together the various dignitaries, nobles, and kings of—" He broke off and cleared his throat. Such a language was above this misfortunate brat, and even Peregrine decided that he would need to use small words and elementary concepts in order to reach any sort of understanding with this boy. He was, by virtue of his birth, intellectually and emotionally inferior, after all. Why, Peregrine could have begun to communicate with him on the same level. He could see that now. It's where, when a group of people, armed with pointed sticks, come together and stab each other with their pointed sticks until somebody wins. The winner gets a lot of money, which is like food, only you can't eat it, or he gets to marry a princess. Then someone would become jealous and insist the winner was cheating, or had an enchanted pointed stick, and they'll kill each other in a duel. That's a fight with pointed sticks, and we'll sing about them for a few years hence. Now, are you going to take a bath or not?" he demanded, again raising his sleeve very obviously across his nose. "You smell like the devil's dung farm." Patrick stared at the apple while the other man was talking. It was so shiny, and was probably juicy and delicious. He wanted it so much, that he did. However, despite his fixation on the apple, he didn't fail to notice that the man started speaking using rather large words. Patrick had to admit to himself he had no idea what cooperative or dignitaries meant. However, he recognized war, games, and kings. When the man started using simpler terms, Patrick started to think that he was crazy. Pointed sticks, those were obviously swords, and he was well aware of what a duel was. Then the dreaded word came again. He was not about to take a bath. Not at all. And the man had the nerve to tell him that he smelled like something related to the devil. How horrible! Patrick was slowly thinking that it had been a bad idea to approach this person. "Don't need no bath," he mumbled in Irish Gaelic, resisting the man's words. He liked being dirty. If it meant he was bypassed, it was a good thing, and a bath meant soap. He still remembered the merciless scrubbing he had been given by his mother whenever one of his siblings or he had managed to obtain a bit of soap. Grant you, it had been in a stream outside of Dublin, not a proper wash-tub, but the experience was the same. His mother had not relented, even when Patrick had complained. The girls had adored being clean, but not Patrick of Fintan. The thought of his siblings and his mother brought a small chuckle to his lips before he regained his focus. "They're smelly highborns," Patrick said quickly, slurring his words together. He needed something to drink as well. He still hadn't clued into the fact that this man was obviously highborn, and, quite frankly, didn't care at the moment. Peregrine tilted his head to one side. The words were spoken too quickly, slurred in a different accent, and were too thick for him to properly understand them, though they were familiar. "Sorry," he said politely, with an edge of irritation hovering on the edge of his voice. "Your words are murky," the prince added unnecessarily. Then he understood through the thick Irish brogue what Patrick was trying to tell him. He glared at him and shoved the apple back into his saddlebag and clasped it shut again. "And starving us for snivelling serfs, you pig-feeling carcass," Peregrine told him, pointedly tossing his clean auburn hair and taking both reins in his hands. He wasn't as offended as he could putting on mind, what with the opportunity to viciously insult someone else, particularly someone who couldn't do anything about it. The apple disappeared. Patrick let out a cry and launched at Peregrine, his panic over the loss of the beautiful red jewel clouding his judgment. Sure, it wasn't very smart to leave it a man riding a horse, but he wasn't going to stop at anything to obtain that apple. "Give it!" he snapped, reaching for the saddlebag. He wasn't going to starve, no way. He wasn't a pig-feeling carcass or a snivelling serf, whatever a serf was. He was a young man who needed food, and was in a new world. However, as he reached for the saddlebag where the precious treat was, he tripped over his own feet and plopped to the ground. The fall knocked some sense into him. Getting up and wiping his cheek with the back of a grimy hand, he smoothed his cotton shirt with the other and kept his eyes averted. He then grunted, hoping that the man wouldn't do anything to him. Before he could blink, Peregrine lost his apple to a smelly serf. This did not bother him, as he had more food and money if he ran out. Never mind the fact that he was a prince and could practically walk around and expect 5-star service from anyone and everyone. However, it did give him an excuse to make a show out of it. "You don't really understand, do you?" he muttered, throwing his hands up and lunging back towards his reins. "Would you like me to illustrate it for you?" And without waiting for an answer, he threw himself in headlong. "I think I will." He called out to the various people, most of whom from this distance he thought to be peasants, in a carrying, authoritative voice, the one he usually reserved for reading his father's stuffy, condescending speeches. "Gather round, gather round!" He waved his arms in a beckoning gesture and turned Archimedes in a small volte to gouge their attention. "Hello, ladies!" He flashed the woman in the audience a grin. "Look at your man!" He gestured at the peasant, who apparently thought washing was beneath him. "Now back to me. Now back, good man. Now back to me." With each person indicated, he pointed in their direction, the smelling peasant behind your man, and himself being me. Then he continued, one eyebrow raised, a superior expression on his face. "Sadly, he isn't me. But if you stop using the soap scented with perfume for the ladies and switch to medieval spice, he could smell like he's me." He smirked, barely being able to contain his laughter. "Look down!" He pointed at the ground. "Back up!" He pointed at the sky. "Where are you? You're on a boat with the man your man could smell like." He gestured at himself again. "What's in your hand? Back at me! My hand!" He opened his hand to reveal an official tournament scroll. "It's an oyster with 2 pottery shards to that thing you love. Look again! The pottery shards are now diamonds." He closed his hands dramatically, and all the excitement in his voice. "Anything is possible when your man smells like a medieval spice and not a lady." And then he ended by pointing at the obvious, closing his legs around Archimedes' barrel so the pony raised his head. "I'm on a horse." The thread does continue, with Peregrine whipping Patrick and Patrick retaliating, and it does eventually end with Peregrine dragging Patrick off to be his personal servant. However, my throat is a bit sore right now. Maybe one day I will finish it, but for now, thanks for listening!